She is a psychologist, a media personality, and an entrepreneur. She has a PhD in psychology and had further training and certifications in sex and relationships therapy from the University of Guelph, Cambridge Alliance, Harvard Medical School. Oops. Okay, wait, sorry. And the Society for Scientific Study of Sexuality. Her expertise is focused on Filipino sexual behaviors and sexual pleasure, and her practice revolves around individuals and couples with sexual and relationship or marital issues. She provides sexuality education to the Filipino youth and is part of campaigns for HIV awareness and family planning. She has also worked with UN Women and other NGOs to help address gender-based violence in the country. As a sex therapist, researcher, educator, and lover, she opines that Filipino sexual ownership is sexier than sex. So I'll turn over the floor to Dr. Rica. Dr. Rica, for our visually impaired friends, may I ask if you can describe us what you look like right now?
Hi, Danny. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I am short-haired, wearing a black jumpsuit and red glasses. I will be sharing my screen for some slides as I go through my presentation, but I will be also telling what I wrote in the slides as my main points. Okay, let me share. There you go. Can you see my screen? My screen, for those who can't see, it says Orgasm Gap. All right. So good evening, everyone. First off, I would like to congratulate Jamie for knowing the truth and sharing with us her story. I really love what you said, that we have to be aligned with who we really are, and we don't have to change for anyone. I resonate with that so well. So I am Dr. Rica Cruz, and I will be talking about the orgasm gap. I'm an educator first and foremost, so I will be giving you some scientific facts about the orgasm gap and how we'll be able to address it moving forward. I know a lot of you already know what this is, but for those who don't, let's define what an orgasm gap or the orgasm gap is. So the orgasm gap is the term coined for the phenomenon that has been documented for over 20 years in literature. And this states that women have fewer orgasms during partnered sexual intercourse or sexual encounters than men. Although other types of orgasm gaps also exist in literature, including between women engaged in partnered sex versus masturbation, women engaged in sex with other women versus with men, and women engaged in casual versus relationship sex. In this talk, I want to focus on the gap that exists between partnered heterosexual intercourse. So what does this mean? So studies have shown that men orgasm between 85 to 91% of the time during intercourse versus women who only orgasm 39 to 65% of the time. And that's a huge disparity. Now, this is not just specific to a culture. In literature that you will find, this is happening globally. I personally actually experienced this. Growing up, I would be in relationships where sex is over the moment my partner ejaculates or orgasms. And during my young adulthood, it was difficult for me to orgasm during intercourse. And I find it unfair. I find it really, really unfair because I wasn't enjoying the sexual intercourse or the sexual encounter as much as they were enjoying it. To add to this, studies found that most men think that their partners have orgasmed even when they really haven't. And that's false perception right there. So for example, you're a woman and you didn't orgasm during intercourse, there's a high probability that your partner, if your partner is a male, thinks that you did. And with that, he also thinks that he did such a great job when in reality, he didn't. And that's a problem right there. So I used to have a partner who thought he was like one of the best. And those macho types, and who really thinks that he's really good and bad, but in reality he wasn't, because I wasn't pleased at all. And now that I'm looking at it in hindsight, I kind of think that I'm partly to blame, because I let it be. I let him think that I was okay. I did not voice out my opinion saying that, hey, you know what? That wasn't good at all. But I just let it be and accepted it as it was. Furthermore, there are also studies that found that women were actually 5 times more likely to report pain during intercourse than men. So, and this is not pain that's consensually inflicted, right? Because that's a different kind of pain. That's pleasurable kind of pain. But this is pain that is actual unwanted discomfort. And why do we need to address these things? Because, like what I said, as a woman, I find it very unfair that we don't get to enjoy something as pleasurable as sex. And I believe we as women should really to have what we call now as the orgasm equality, where both men and women have a fair share of orgasms and pleasure during their sexual encounters. So how will we have this, right? How can we address this problem? So to address this problem, we need to know first where the orgasm gap comes from. Before, arguments about that women orgasm less, I'm laughing because it's ridiculous. But for a long time, arguments were about women having less orgasms because they say that our bodies are not just made to have as frequent orgasms as males. And they said that our bodies are too complicated and difficult to please. Do you agree with that? I don't, because study after study have already debunked this thinking, and women can actually orgasm quickly and easily if they want to, right? At least I know I can. After all the training I went through, I think I was able to learn how to orgasm quickly and easily. And I believe, Dr. Martha, I'm going to put you in the picture and say that you learned that too, right? You were taught that too, how to please yourself and how to orgasm the way you want to. So maybe it's not biological. It's not a women's body's fault why there's an orgasm gap. And researchers started to point out that the orgasm gap exists mainly because of social cultural factors and scripts. So what are these scripts? When you look at literature, science have found out that our cultural devaluing of women's sexual pleasure and overvaluing of men's pleasure and intercourse are the root causes of the orgasm gap. So you're going to ask me, how do we overvalue men's pleasure and intercourse? Easily. First off, let's look at the current sexual script that you see on the screen. There's sex script there. I will tell you what the sex script is. First is foreplay. So when we were taught that when we will have sex, we have to have foreplay. And foreplay is for women to get ready for intercourse. Then when the woman's ready, intercourse comes in, and then there's the male orgasm, and then the sex is over. In this circumstance, in this script, the man is responsible to give the woman an orgasm during intercourse. And how will they do that? By thrusting long and hard. And does it really make sense for the women here? Do we really get pleasure when men try to last longer in bed and thrust us harder? No, I see you all shaking your heads. No, right? Because, well, maybe for some, but mostly no. We don't get pleasure through lasting longer in bed or getting hard thrusts. Because sometimes we get dry. Sometimes we actually think, when is this going to be over? That's why sometimes we just fake it, is we just wanted to get over and done it because it just doesn't work. This script doesn't work for us. And another way that we're prioritizing male orgasm is through our language and media. So for example, we use the words sex and intercourse as if they're one and the same when they're not, right? Because intercourse is intercourse and sex is an umbrella term for everything that we do. And for some people, we relegate foreplay, everything before sex, as foreplay, implying foreplay as a lesser form of sex than intercourse. But in reality, it's not. It's still sex. So that in itself focuses and puts so much worth on intercourse rather than the other sexual behaviors. Recent studies also indicate that media images of heterosexual sex generally portray women orgasming or getting an orgasm from intercourse alone, if they orgasm at all. There's also a study that I found that says only 25% of the orgasms in Pornhub involve some form of direct or indirect clitoral stimulation. So how they portray women orgasming or having orgasms is false too. So really, what's out there is not what we want to happen if we want women to have more orgasms. So this popular notion actually runs counter to the science that indicates that most women do not orgasm from penetration alone or intercourse alone. In fact, women report more frequent orgasms if their sexual encounters include deep kissing, the fondlings, the manual genital stimulation and clitoral stimulation, and or oral sex, in addition to penile vaginal penetration or intercourse. I can attest to this because I myself have a hard time having an orgasm through intercourse alone, unless I have something that could also stimulate my clitoris during penetration. So these scripts that we are actually ingrained with are not helping us women achieve pleasure. But it's not just the script that's an issue. Fine, we have that culture, we have, those aspects, societal aspects, but it's also actually found in how we see ourselves as women. Why? Because a lot of us women also lack a sense of entitlement to our own sexual pleasure. In my study of the sexual pleasure for the Filipino women, I discovered that most women here, at least here in the Philippines, actually go through a phase of sexual compliance. What is sexual compliance? It's when they see their partner's pleasure as an end goal. So they comply, they give in to having sex with them, even if they don't want to, without thinking of their own pleasure. that even if they do not physically experience pleasure, they feel that it's okay because they were able to pleasure their partners anyway. So they're not really thinking about their physical pleasure. It's more of their obligation to their partners that they're thinking of. And even if the sex isn't good, they would still do it because they want their partners to be pleasured. In reality, a lot of men here, they're Filipino men, at least here in the Philippines, think that they don't need to help their partners climax after they ejaculate. The stories that I hear from women actually say that, after my partner ejaculates, I have to go to the toilet, to the washroom to masturbate myself. Or they're frustrated. They tell me they're frustrated because they can't finish. And a lot of women here too do not masturbate. So they remain frustrated by not having an orgasm. Or worse, they just accept that this is the reality. So most of them still haven't experienced what a real orgasm is. They think that the arousal or the tension that they feel in their bodies during sex is orgasm. But that's it. They haven't experienced orgasms yet. And it's sad as a woman because my orgasms are intense and it helps me become a better person, right? So I truly believe that if we have better sex, we'll have a better world because they're just going to be happy people around. So how can we change this? How can we change those narratives? How can we level the playing field for us women? So as researchers, as educators and scientists, a clear answer actually is to provide pleasure-centric sex education to everyone, not just children, everyone, even parents, even adults. Why? Because at this point, most of the sex education that we had, if we ever got one, they're focused on not getting pregnant or not getting sick. That's it. But scientists have been proposing that what if we teach our children skills and tools to be prepared about sex and talk about sex and their pleasure? What if we teach them how to be comfortable with their bodies, right, Jamie? And, how to be comfortable with their bodies and to explore who they really are so that when the time comes that they're ready for partnered sex, they can also experience pleasure. And why can't we teach them to advocate for their own pleasure and, say an enthusiastic yes if they really want sex and know how to say no because they know that the sex won't be good or even if they don't want to. And what if we also start teaching parents to have those kinds of talks with their children? Then it will be a different scenario altogether. What else? By teaching these people, we can have a sexually healthy culture. And by having a sexually healthy culture, we will be encouraged to know more about the science of our bodies, our arousals, our desires. And we know how our bodies will act this way and how they will react to sex. And thus, when we know a lot, we will be more able to openly express ourselves and know ourselves, asking what we want and don't want in our sexual encounters. More so, we will start to feel entitled to our own pleasure and be able to say that we need pleasure and we want pleasure, and to start actually demanding and championing our own orgasms during intercourse. And we really need to learn this. And as women championing for our own pleasure, right? For the women here who already know how to pleasure themselves or how to champion or advocate for their own pleasure, we can then teach other women who struggle to orgasm to first be more comfortable with their bodies. We can teach other women who are still, not comfortable with themselves, not comfortable with the idea, to discover who they are as sexual persons. And when they become more comfortable with their bodies, they can have a healthy self-esteem. They can be in a more supportive environment with us there. So they can learn to explore more about what they want and what they don't want. They can exactly know who they are as sexual people. And then when they start to know who they are as sexual people, they will be more comfortable to touch their bodies and masturbate and give themselves pleasure. And when they do that, they can also figure out what kind of genital and clitoral stimulation they need through masturbation. And when they already know this, then we can teach them and help them transfer this type of stimulation to their partners in bed. So in other words, we help them to engage in sexual behaviors in which they get the same type of stimulation alone when they can pleasure themselves, when they're comfortable with themselves, as with a partner who they're comfortable with, a partner who they can trust, right? Sorry, I think my voice is really loud. I tend to get passionate when I talk about these things. And through these things, hopefully, again, as women here, we get to be able to change the script from a foreplay, intercourse, male orgasm, sex over script to something that's more equally shared, right? A more equal sex script that includes, kissing or oral sex, where penetration is consistently paired with clitoral stimulation. And hopefully, we will have more chances of enjoying sex. We will have both female and male orgasms during these sexual encounters, right? Because, why I'm so passionate about these things? Because I really believe that us women deserve to enjoy sex too. And that's it for me. Thank you very much. I am Dr. Rica Cruz again, and thank you for listening. I'll stop my screen now.
Okay. Thank you so much for that sharing, Dr. Rica. So I have a few questions here. So how do we get over the sexual compliance that you talked about in your presentation? Because as a Filipina who's in the same country, I kind of understand the problem because a lot of the Filipinos, or culturally here in the Philippines, we don't talk. Like if there's a problem, we tend to keep it to ourselves. So how can we actually get over that?
Then we start talking, right? you said it. You said it yourself. The problem is we don't talk. Then we should start talking. If you have your partner that you trust, right, that you're comfortable with, you tell him or her that you're not in the mood for sex tonight. You don't have to comply, right? And for you not to be scared that you will reject him or her, you can actually say that, I really want to, but my body is not into it. Maybe we can schedule it again. It's not an outright no, but of course you have to give your partner something to hold on to, that so he or she will not think that you are rejecting them and you don't like them. So start talking, and then maybe on the other side, you also tell him or her if you want sex, right? If it's you who wants sex. And that would also make your partner feel that they're wanted and they're not being rejected if you're just saying no. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Dr. Martha has a few questions. So, how would you answer this? How many times can a woman orgasm at one time?
Oh, Martha, how many can you orgasm? It's different per women. So Martha can orgasm 6 times. I think in literature, there's a woman who can orgasm 20 times in a row. I'm a kind of person, yeah, I'm the kind of person who just enjoy one intense orgasm and then I need to relax a bit, right? And then I'll have more. Who said 10? 10. There you go. So it really depends on your body and how you what you want to aim for, right, Martha?
So, there's another question from Martha. What advice would you give a vagina owner who wants to learn how to orgasm?
You know what? The first thing I tell my students is to look at themselves in the mirror naked and to look at the vagina with the mirror, and then they start touching themselves and see what's pleasurable for them. That's it, actually. It's just being more comfortable with your body naked and knowing what you want by touching yourself everywhere. And it's just you, no one's watching you. So you don't have to be um, ashamed of it or guilty, right?
So, where do you think that guilt comes from? Especially
Oh,
or right now that we're stuck here in lockdown. Like, there are lots of people who wants to explore, but they are still scared to do it. So, how do they get over that?
it's where does the guilt come from? It's the culture. I believe it's not just religion, it's the patriarchy telling us that we can't touch our bodies, right? Um so it's difficult actually to surpass that. But if you want to, if you're willing to and you start loving your body more, you can gradually learn how to pleasure yourself and be more comfortable with your body. Mhm.
So yeah, last question. I think you touched up on this a while ago. Like, how can parents open up about topics around sex, pleasure, masturbation, and safe sex practices while talking to their children?
Okay, I really tell the parents to start when the kids are young. I say sex education starts when education starts. And usually they have to take the lead of the children because the children, once they start talking, they ask questions like, where did I come from? Right? Like, what is this? If they're going to point to their genitals, they have to be the one to answer those things scientifically accurately for their children. They can't say that, oh, you know what, that's what how do we sugarcoat these things? Um
Birds and the
yeah,
bees kind of
yeah, the
thing.
birds
Yeah.
and the bees, no. Right? Or you were bought from the stork. So we need to avoid those narratives and actually tell the children how they were made. There are a lot of resources on the internet for gender appropriate sex education. One of the resources that I look at is amaze.org. Um, you can Google it, amaze.org, and they have gender appropriate sex education, which the parents can actually read. So, because a lot of parents come to me and say, we don't know what to say. We're not taught. We weren't taught sex ed. I said, you know what? Google's your friend right now. Because there are resources that they can actually read and watch, yes, with their children. And then when their children ask questions, the answers are right there. And yes, adults need it too.
Okay, so maybe we can proceed with the other speaker. Like, we can always talk
Thank
about this
you.
later. So for before I share the other